Hi, everyone. Over the last number of videos, we've been talking a lot about worry, a model of worry, a basic engine that drives our worry process. We've talked about the role of intolerance of uncertainty as the fuel that drives this worry engine. And in recent videos, we've been focused on another factor that maintains excessive worry, and that's beliefs about the usefulness of worry. And we've talked about 5 common worry beliefs that people will sometimes hold. These ideas that uh, we worry so much because we believe that the worry is serving some positive benefit. And as long as we hold beliefs that worry is serving some positive benefit, we're going to continue to worry. So in today's video, we're going to look at how worry beliefs relate to type 2 worries. And these are worries about future or potential problems. They're problems that haven't happened yet. They're problems that may never happen, but they're still things that we worry about. And one worry belief that tends to relate to type 2 worries is a belief that worry in and of itself can actually prevent bad things from happening. Now, when I first bring up this worry belief with clients, I often get a response of, oh no, I don't really believe that. That's ridiculous. But then as we start talking about things like manifesting or the law of attraction from The Secret, this idea that just thinking positive things can make good things happening, people can buy into that. And then they begin to realize if I can believe that positive things can create a reality, doesn't it make just as much sense that worry about negative things can affect reality? We're all a little superstitious, if we're honest with ourselves. Maybe you've got a lucky pair of socks for important meetings, or uh, you avoid saying no hitter during a baseball game when a pitcher's pitching a no hitter. For worriers, it becomes if I don't worry a lot about my presentation, I'll get too confident and as a result, I'll fail. That's how this belief can kind of trick us into thinking that worry is necessary to prevent bad things from happening. But the problem is, this belief makes worry feel useful. If you're convinced that worrying prevents bad things from happening, why would you stop worrying? That's why simply telling yourself, this is ridiculous, I shouldn't believe this, doesn't work. Because your brain's been reviewing and practicing this belief over and over and over again for years. It's been driving worry for years that it's not enough to just tell yourself it's not true. You need to look for evidence for why it's not true. So, how do you challenge this belief that worry prevents bad things from happening? Well, you want to ask yourself a few questions. First of all, has anything bad ever happened even though you worried about it? And if you can think of even just one example of something bad that happened even though you worried about it, what that demonstrates is that worry doesn't always prevent bad things from happening. If I hold the belief that if I don't worry about something, that's going to lead to something bad happening, whereas if I do worry about something, it's going to lead to something good happening. Is this based in real evidence or is it based in selective attention? In other words, am I selectively attending to the times when things went well when I worried about it and haven't necessarily thought about all of the times when things went well without me worrying about it? This type of selective attention can convince us that of things that aren't necessarily true because we're only paying attention to part of the information that supports these false assumptions. Another question to ask is, are there other factors that are better predictors of what happened other than whether I worried or not? So for example, how much time did I spend preparing for that presentation or for that job interview? And did that play more of a role in the outcome than how much I worried about it? You also want to ask yourself how much worry is actually enough to guarantee a good outcome. Is it 5 minutes of worrying? Is it 5 hours of worrying? The fact that there's no logical dose to how much you should be worrying shows how shaky or questionable this belief actually is. One of my favorite ways to test this worry belief is with a simple experiment. And the idea is that you go out and you buy a lottery ticket, and then you spend 20 minutes every day worrying as hard as you can about having wasted your money on that lottery ticket. If worry could prevent negative outcomes, what should happen? Well, you should win the lottery, right? But in all of my years of assigning this assignment, this experiment to my clients, not one client has ever come back and said, "Hey, I won the lottery." It's because our worries do not have an effect on preventing negative things from happening. Thoughts don't shape the world, our actions do. Safe driving prevents accidents, not worrying about accidents. Preparation helps you get a job, not anxiety. And when we realize this, it allows us to stop treating worry like it's doing something useful and to start putting that energy into things that actually matter, things that actually help. So now let's talk about another worry belief. And this is the idea that worry in and of itself can prevent future negative emotions. A lot of people believe that worrying helps prepare them for bad things. It helps protect them from negative emotions if something bad were to happen. And the logic behind this is that by worrying in advance, I'm protecting myself from being caught off guard. I'm preventing tremendous disappointment or guilt or shock if the worst actually occurs because I've already thought about it. It's almost like I've pre worried and pre grieved that loss ahead of time. You can think of it kind of like emotional insurance. If I constantly worry about losing my job, then when it actually happens, I can tell myself, well, at least I saw this coming. I've been preparing for it for a while. The worry belief becomes kind of like an emotional prepayment. I've already done some of the grieving and the suffering in advance, so the actual event won't hit me as hard. But the critical question is, does it actually work this way? Does worrying truly prevent us from future negative emotional pain? And so the way I like to examine this is through what I call the pieces of suck metaphor. It's kind of a way of quantifying emotional costs. So imagine this scenario. I spend years worrying on a daily basis about my family dying in a car accident. And every time I worry about this, it's costing me emotional energy. Let's think of that as 100 pieces of suck. The constant anxiety weighs on me, it affects my present, it affects my quality of life, and so it costs me 100 pieces of suck. Now, one day, I received that dreaded phone call. My family actually was killed in a motor vehicle accident. Does my worrying ahead of time make this any less devastating? Well, I say to myself, well, whew, thank goodness I've been worrying about this all these years. It doesn't hurt so much now that it's happened. Of course not. It would still suck. And so say that would cost me 1,000 pieces of suck, whether I worried about it or not. So let's do the math. In option one, where I worry in advance of the negative thing happening and the negative thing actually happens, well, the worrying in advance costs me 100 pieces of suck. The bad thing happening costs me 1,000 pieces of suck. And so I end up with 1,100 pieces of suck. Now, the second option is I don't worry excessively about this for years. And so I don't have that 100 pieces of suck. But then the tragedy occurs and I end up with that 1,000 pieces of suck. And so the total is 1,000 pieces of suck. So In the scenario where I'm worrying excessively, I've got 1,100 pieces of sock. The scenario where I don't worry excessively, I end up with 1,000 pieces of sock. Worry actually increases the emotional toll. It's costing me more sock than if I don't worry about it. Now, let's imagine things if my family never actually dies in a motor vehicle accident. So in scenario one, I worry about it excessively. I've got 100 pieces of sock. My family doesn't die in an accident, so I end up with 0 pieces of sock. I end up with 1,000 pieces of sock total. Scenario two, where I don't worry about it excessively, so that's 0 pieces of sock. My family doesn't die in an accident, that's another 0 pieces of sock. I end up with 0 pieces of sock. It's still better than 100 pieces of sock. The worrying constantly costs me more in terms of those emotional pieces of sock. And that's true regardless of whether or not the bad thing happens or not. Worry doesn't provide emotional protection. It just makes you suffer in advance whether or not the bad thing ever happens. So when clients tell me that they feel that worry prepares them for negative emotions, I always ask them to do the math. Is the worry actually reducing your suffering, or is it adding to it? So while this pieces of sock metaphor might sound a little silly, what I find is that it demonstrates that worry really doesn't protect us. And I've often had clients tell me that it really does stick with them, that they often think, do the math, do the math. Because all the worry does is to make us experience pain twice, once in anticipation, and again if the negative event actually occurs. So the next time you catch yourself thinking that your worry is somehow preparing you for something bad happening, remember, do the math. And if you're interested in learning more about how to challenge beliefs that worry demonstrate you're a caring, conscientious, responsible person, I'll link to that next video in this worry management series up here once it's been posted. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.